Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining myself, Kamara, and Amy Davies.
Hi.
Hi. We are both so excited to be kicking off this New to North America webinar series. And this has been in the works for a while, something that Amy and I have been talking about on and off for quite some time. So, yeah, anyway, so just really excited to have everybody here. This is the first of a few webinars, and if there's the demand, we will continue on as
For
we can,
sure.
as we can fit it into our schedule. So,
Yeah, and I just
uh,
wanted to say a couple things before we got started,
for
Kamara.
sure.
One is, first of all, welcome. If you've come to North America, we're really so happy to have you. And
Very.
that was number one. And number two, what you're doing is really hard, and we appreciate that. I've lived in a different country and actually found it really tough to come back to Canada, believe it or not. So that's one of the reasons that I feel so passionately about helping people that have come over to a new country. And I know, Kamara, you've done something similar. And what I'll say surprised me the most was I actually found the transition to a new country a little easier and coming back to Canada a little more difficult. And I think one of the reasons is because, well, there's a few, but the big reason was I could be quirky in a different country in ways. When I got back here, people expected me to be very Canadian, and I lived in England, so I felt very British when I got back, and I had what I would describe as a reverse culture shock.
I had that too.
Yeah, so I don't know where you lived, Kamara.
I lived in Japan for a short
Wow.
period of time. And
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Even though that is my culture,
Yeah.
I had the culture shock going, and then yes, the reverse culture
The
shock, as you've
reverse
noted,
shock.
coming
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
And the one thing I would say that made it more difficult is I didn't find, and we have ways to get over that, and we're going to talk about that in other sessions, but I didn't find the Canadian market particularly open to international experience. And that was one of the barriers for me getting my first job here when I came back to Canada. And believe it or not, my network wasn't great. So I'm glad we're talking about this, because building up your network is what really helped me find my footing. So hopefully this helps everyone in the session today.
Absolutely. And it was also equally as important for me to find my footing when I returned too. So it was all about that network.
Yeah.
Um, So we'll just take a moment and introduce ourselves and just really tell you what has inspired us to, aside from our own backgrounds, what has inspired us to launch this webinar series and hold some training. So, Amy, did you want to introduce
Sure.
yourself first and talk about First 30?
Sure, yeah. And I'll start with, a few years ago, I published a book called A Spark in the Dark. And it's all about having a successful career in what I refer to as a reorg world, where we're losing and changing our jobs every 2 to 3 years. And so that sort of launched me into a whole new career. So now First 30 is a business that does both career transitions. So we work with companies who are laying off staff and we help them get back to work. And then we also work in employee onboarding. So we have a tool, a platform that we use, and we build employee onboarding experiences.
Wonderful. And for me, I'm a resume writer and a job search strategist, and I help my clients land great fitting gigs. And a lot of my clients are newcomers to Canada and newcomers to the US as well. People who have obtained, in most cases, their PR already and are ready to actually decide on when and where they're going to land in North America. That's often when I come into the equation and give them a hand with their resume and LinkedIn and job search strategy. And in terms of hosting this webinar series, I think we were both really impacted by what we were seeing going on unfortunately, in the Ukraine, and I think that really felt like a call to action for both of us. Would you agree, Amy?
Yeah, and I would say, beyond, even beyond the Ukraine, just around, sorry, Ukraine, I should not say the before that, and around the world in general, we're seeing a lot of people in various countries needing, for whatever reason, to leave or making the decision to come. And one of the things that really struck me about seeing people in situations over the years where they've needed to leave their home country and come to Canada as refugees is people aren't planning for that. So you might come here and not speak English. You might not understand the Canadian culture or the US culture. So I started to help people coming over at functions and events, as a volunteer. And then now it's so great because one thing that COVID did bring us was this exceptional understanding of how to communicate with way more people in these types of sessions.
Totally. It really breaks down barriers and really transcends borders.
Mhm. Yeah.
So yeah, we're in a great time for networking, and we're really excited to share what we know about networking, which has proven, as we said, essential in our careers, in our businesses too.
Yeah.
We met through networking.
We did. Yeah, we met on LinkedIn.
Yeah, on LinkedIn. Yeah,
Yeah.
online. So yeah, through digital networking. So the value of it, the importance of it cannot be underestimated. So
I just want to remind you, Kamara, we have not met in person yet.
I know. We
in our IRL, in real life.
I know. Isn't that crazy to think
It is
about?
crazy. It's coming
Yeah,
soon. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. So let's dive into the networking bit of what everybody is here for today.
Mhm.
So yeah, we're dedicating this whole session to networking because it is so important and such a vital foundational piece of your job search. So we'll be going through kind of an A to Z. I got to say it both ways. Of networking. And so we'll talk about why it's so important, what the purpose of it really is, it's some common networking mistakes that we see, and how to really remedy those, and what effective networking should or could look like, and how and who you can network with in your job search. And then we'll take your questions as well. Anything you want to add to that, Amy?
All I'm going to say is the reason we know so much about making mistakes networking is because we probably made a lot of them ourselves. Yes, definitely me too. So I want to be very clear that when we're talking about a lot of these things, it's been a learning process for us as well. And while we might speak to it as professionals now, we've probably both put our foot in it. I don't want to speak for you, Kamara, but I know that
You can, and this is accurate.
Yeah. And that's, it's coming from a place of just, I've been there, I've done that, and here's what I did to make things better.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So let's get into, we'll just take the slides away so they're not distracting. So let's first talk about why networking is so important to your job search. Are there some thoughts that you wanted to share right off the top, Amy?
Well, one of the things and one of the reasons we ran the session first is because it's probably one of the first things people try to start doing when they get here, right? Because
For sure.
I think a lot of the people coming over do understand that or have been told that it's really important to build your network wherever you are going. But it is, I mean, it enhances everything you do. So whatever you do, maybe you're sitting on your computer searching job boards, you're going into the community for, to look at into places where you can get support with your job search, but include networking in this process. It's not going to be everything you do, but it will make everything better for you, even though it's really hard to do. And we're going to talk about that too.
Yes, it is hard, and it's not easy to know where you might be going wrong, or what you're doing is right or well received. So yeah, just to add, networking is when I think about job search strategy, so obviously the resume piece is important. Having a good profile is important. But really the networking piece, meeting the right people, shaking the right hands, maybe, or, elbow bumping
Fist
people.
pumping.
Yeah, fist bumping
Yeah.
people. Connecting with people, however that takes shape, is going to be what is the essential critical piece of your job search success. So the whole, like, it's not what you know, it's who you know, that, some of that's true. But for me, I think networking from a job search perspective is super important in terms of memorability as well. Being top of mind when when a recruiter or hiring manager is conducting a search for a particular job. Who are the first people they're going to think of? People they know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they say there's all these stats running around about how many jobs are people get from networking. And what I would say to that is, because the stats vary, and I don't think anyone would really have an accurate stat on that, you don't know what you're missing by not networking. And it's when you get out there and you start doing it, you really realize what the payoff is. If you never do it, you'll never know, but you'll also have missed out on all of the benefits of it.
Totally. And that brings up a really good point, because people attending today might be hearing about things like the hidden job market and things like that, which is only accessed by networking. And then they might hear like 80%, 90% of jobs aren't posted.
Right.
It's very hard to measure something that is supposedly hidden. So I would take those stats with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But know that you really can't go wrong by building relationships. So
That's a really good way to put it.
Thank you. So it's really it will only strengthen your job search and your career progression. So, all right. So we've talked a bit about why it's so important. I guess when I think of networking, it's building those relationships, as well as identifying opportunities for collaboration, and where there's some synergies, and again, where you might be the person to meet some business needs through an actual job. Are there any other benefits or purposes of networking that come to mind for you, Amy?
Well, I mean, I kind of look at how our relationship developed, right?
Totally.
And there's been so many benefits to the type of networking we did. And I will add that the way we met was by commenting on each other's LinkedIn posts, if I remember correctly. And we were really identifying and responding to each other's posts, but also responding to each other's comments. And, there was not really a clear business need when we first started talking.
That's true.
Over time, we have started working together more and more, and increasingly, I hope, over the years.
Yes.
And we built that foundation of trust. And it's a long game. Networking is a very long game. And that's not something I know the people on this call today. It's a very hard thing to hear, because you come to a new country, you need a job, you want to network and get a job. And I totally get that. But what you might be doing is you might come here, network, continue to network and network and network. Maybe you do something out of your field while you continue to network, and your networking pays off in your second and third and fourth jobs. It's not necessarily going to be what gets you the paycheck that you need to get to that. You do something else. And honestly, that's what I did. When I came back to Canada, I actually started a dog walking business because I love dogs, and it went really well. Yeah. And I loved it for a time, but I'm going to tell you, can I give a sneak peek to some advice I'm going to give later? Is it okay?
Please.
So what happened was, just to show you how it all works, I had excellent client service for this business. And when I really wanted a job, I did then what I recommend the participants in our outplacement program or career transition program do now, which is called the signal flare approach. It was a world before LinkedIn, if you can imagine it. I actually sent everyone I knew in Toronto, where I'm located, my resume. And I said, I really love your help finding a job. Here are the types of jobs I'm looking for. Attached is my resume. If one of my clients got me an interview, like within the first few days of me doing that, I didn't
That's
even know
amazing.
what he did. But that is, so I got that first role, I created it. And then I started not using, that's a bad word, but started building those relationships. And then when I needed help, I asked for it. And I was very clear about what I needed, and I created an email that was very easy for them to forward as well to people that they knew.
I think that's a great point about making it easy. We want to make it easy for the people who are asking for help to actually help us,
Correct. We
which
certainly
I think
do.
we'll get into. Yeah, we'll
Yep.
get into in more detail as we go along. And for me, when I think about returning from Japan, I was starting to send out, "Hey, remember me?" Emails like yours
Yeah.
about a month or two before I was departing. And to return to Canada. And then also, when I moved on from the role that I would eventually secure, I got an introduction or an employee referral through my network, through my dodgeball team.
Wow. See, it's not, we're talking a lot about LinkedIn today, but it's not all of that,
It's
right? It's
not
about,
all, yeah.
one great app. Okay, I have to admit, I'm going to my first one tomorrow.
Okay.
It's called Meetups. And I think you can just go meetups.com and
Hmm.
sign up and then join groups of common interest. So for me, I love walking and hiking. There's a kayaking group that I just joined. And so tomorrow I'm going for a walk hike with some people, and I'll never have met them, but it's near where I live, and it will be I think it will be a lot of fun. So
That's
that's a good
amazing.
way just to connect with people over common interests and start from that. So if you've come to, I think Meetup is North America wide. So log on there and see what you can do. Wow, we went a little off piece there, Kamara. I keep having LinkedIn in my mind, but we forget there's so many other ways to connect
Actually, funny enough,
outside.
me too. And I should note this before it leaves my brain inevitably. But I'm not a fan of Facebook, but I
Yeah,
rejoined
me either.
Facebook for
Yeah.
Marketplace and Buy Nothing. Have you heard of
Okay.
Buy
Yep,
Nothing?
I have.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So I've been super into Buy Nothing. And then from Buy Nothing, I found out about a group called Being Neighborly or something.
Right.
And it's basically a grouping of neighbors, although there's thousands of people in this group in my local, very hyper local neighborhood. And basically, people post anything that they want advice on, help with, anything.
Oh,
And so
wow.
I see a lot of people asking for jobs or asking about jobs and being very specific about what they do, which is super important. And then they get comments and responses. So you just never know, like if it's in your own backyard, even.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that is
so
funny.
yeah, and the
Well, one
hiking is.
thing,
Mhm.
sorry, go ahead. The
Oh, I was
hiking?
just going to say the hiking is great. Connecting over shared interests, shared activities.
Mhm.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Sorry,
And
you were
I
going
was
to
just
say
going to
something.
say that being
Hmm.
pretty specific, and you've kind of touched on this a bit, having a specific goal in mind when you're reaching out to people. And I do sales for First 30, right? So I know what it's like you want to get people into a situation where they're looking at your products and services and buying from you. But when I reach out to people, my very first intent is just to connect with them, get to know them, understand what they do, and then maybe if it's relevant for them, I'll talk to them about what I do. But my goal is not to get them to buy something from me right away. That's never going to happen, because you need nowadays to build a relationship. So rather than do that, I reach out to people. My goal is to meet them one to one. And
Hmm.
once I have that one to one meeting, I ask them, tell me about you. Tell me about what your role is, what you do, and some of the challenges you're facing. And then we get into more of a conversation, if it's relevant, what we do as an organization and how we might be able to support them. And then from there, maybe the conversation the next time we meet will be more targeted towards the services we offer. Again, if those are relevant to that person. So having your end goal in mind when you're reaching out to people, we know you want it to be getting a job. Totally understand that, but it can't be the first outreach. The first outreach is, do you have 30 minutes? And we actually have a little slide we'll show you about some recommendations on how to reach out for the first time.
Yeah, for sure. Did you want to get into those now? Okay.
Yeah, if you
before
don't
I do, I'm just going to take just a brief detour into the chat because we've got some great comments here. So Jude is here. She's looking forward to learning so she can help her newcomer clients. So thank you, Jude, for joining us. Really appreciate it. And going back to kind of the value of the network. We've got a comment here from, sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, Mardoan, and he's saying your network is your net worth. I love that old adage. Yeah, it's all about building connections and relationships. Absolutely. And Jude just mentioned Meetup is fantastic.
And Jude, I recognize Jude from LinkedIn, by the way.
Yes.
I recognize her from her LinkedIn comments. That just tells you how you can make an impression just by commenting on people's LinkedIn posts.
Absolutely. Maybe we can talk a bit more about commenting later on after we go through your templates. But I agree. Jude, that's, I think Jude and I met also through LinkedIn. She's very active in terms of commenting across platforms. And so highly memorable. Thank you so much for your support, Jude. And Amy, another Amy Gleason. Hi, Amy, also from LinkedIn. Meetups are a fantastic way to connect with people and excellent for international residents to practice English. That's an excellent point. Excellent point. And to that point as well, I remember when I was trying to keep up my Japanese and folks who were either studying or had relocated from Japan were trying to practice their English, we would do conversation exchanges just over coffee.
Yeah.
So that's another way to practice English. Anyway, let us get into the networking meeting request, because I think this is where a lot of us get stressed, eh?
Oh, totally. Totally. And I've lived a lot of my life being stressed out about this too, by the way. Yeah, it's hard to ask for something particularly from a stranger, because who are we most likely to help? First of all, our loved ones. Second of all, it's the people we know, our network, those, our acquaintances. And then outside of all that are strangers. And, when we first reach out to somebody, unless like Jude, they're commenting on our things, so we have some sort of connection with them that way, we're 100% a stranger. So how do we make that a meaningful first touch point with them?
Absolutely. For me, I feel like I'm intruding.
Right.
Like, that's the feeling I get, like kind of like knock, knock, knock. Hi. Sorry to bother you.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? You're going to get a lot of rejection. I got a lot of rejection. Kamara, I'm sure you've been rejected a ton too, right?
Tons.
Yeah. But here's what I say. If you're not feeling that rejection, you're not working hard enough at it. Because you know what? Maybe for every 20 messages you send out, one will come back with a positive response. And you're going to have to just forget about the other 19. Focus on the one that you get. And there's tons of reasons why people don't respond, especially nowadays. You really don't know what's going on in somebody's life, right?
For sure. For me, like if I'm not responding, or if I just a peek behind the curtain, if I'm not responding or I'm delayed in responding, it's because I am dealing with a toddler's tantrum or I am trying to fit some work in somewhere. It's never really about the person who's sending the message. Yeah. And I think that's also where people get a little hung up, is taking it personally. Like it's something I did. Perhaps there's not enough information in your message, but it's not because the other person's offended is unlikely.
Right. I'd like to just back up for a minute.
Yeah.
If we can talk about LinkedIn and making a connection
Sure.
with somebody.
Yeah.
So you're on LinkedIn and you're trying to say connect with people who are in the same industry or field that you're
Sure.
in, but in this new country where you don't really know many people. And what I like to encourage people to do is write a little note, and Kamara is going to put my notes up in a second. But the other thing to think about is, if you are connecting with someone, and I'm saying this because people have done this to me, and it can be hard. So if you get a request for a connection, and in that connection request, there is also a request for something else, like I want your help, or I need to meet one-to-one, or I'd love to meet you for a coffee. As soon as I accept that request, I know that now I have a job to do, right? And I might not want to do that job, so I'll decline the request just based on the fact there's an ask attached to it. Because as soon as that person is in my network, that email pops up on my LinkedIn. So when you're sending your LinkedIn invites, I think that it's good. Now, this is not for when you send the invites. This will be like step 2 or 3. But if you send a LinkedIn invite, you can say, I see we work in the same industry, would love to connect. Something super simple and super short. I don't know if you have anything that you recommend, Kamara.
Yeah, I mean, my behavior is the exact same as yours.
Yes.
I'll be fully honest.
Yeah.
I'm usually really good at staying on top of my connection requests, but I have a few that are lingering in my requests because they have filled out they have customized the message, and that means I have an action item, exactly what you're saying.
Right.
I will respond to them once I get around to accepting their connection request. I think it's while that's my behavior, I still think it's okay to put something in there, but you are very limited on the amount of characters you can use anyway. So keeping it simple, and I think you could add a little bit of specificity, I love that post you made about blah, blah, blah. I love that. I love your take on AI. I'd love more of your, posts in my feed, and leave it at that. And then as you're saying, then when they accept your connection request, then you hit them with the meeting request.
Yeah, take a little break. But that's a really good point, because sometimes if I want to connect with someone, I'll actually go and I will learn a little bit about them on their LinkedIn, and I'll like some or comment on some of their posts, and then I'll go back and try to connect with them, because then they'll see that I'm actually engaging with their content.
For sure.
I know a little bit about them.
That too. Absolutely. Yeah. So let's take a closer look at the template that you have here. So we've got, hi Joe, I'm new to
I just location. Put in, location. And you can be specific if they're from where, like if you're in Chicago and they're in Chicago, you can say Chicago, right? Because that will be something that links the two of you and makes them feel somehow connected with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Originally from Delhi, I've been in the marketing field for 15 years and getting my start in US or Canada. Looking forward to making connections. So this is great because it's being specific about kind of like what you're about, kind of a brief snapshot into your background, being where you're from and where you live now, and what field you're in. So I think that's great, and it just tees this up really nicely to go in for the ask of a quick meeting.
That's right. Yeah.
Awesome.
So what I was going to say is, I just want someone to imagine they've just connected with someone on LinkedIn. This is not what we send within the first day. We connect on LinkedIn. We wait a week or two. I know it's hard to wait, but we do. We wait a week or two. In that week or two, if it's someone we really want to connect with, what are we doing? Liking their content, commenting on their content. Exactly. Just remember the typing fingers. So I like to think of it as, spend the first hour or two of your day. If your full-time job is finding a job, spend the first hour or two of your day it's probably LinkedIn. I hate to say, probably LinkedIn that you're going to be on. You'll go on and you'll do the likes and comments. And then after 2 weeks, Now it's time to start sending a note like this. You can be specific and say, I loved your post about blah, whatever it is. You don't want to make the note too long. And why don't we want to make the note too long? Because most people are reading them on devices like this, right? And a tiny note can look massive on these devices. So you don't want to seem, and what that makes someone feel like is that you might be someone who's going to go on and on and on and on. And if they get on the call with you, they're never getting off. So that is one of the things that I always recommend, is just make it as short as possible. And I personally like this type of approach. And then at the end, it says, I understand if it's a busy time, and reconnect another time if that's better. And that way you're actually giving them permission to not respond right away, and also you're kind of avoiding the no, right? Because now you've also given yourself an opening to reach out to them in another few weeks.
I think we might have a follow-up message here.
Yeah. Hey, surprise, Joe. It's Sal again. No. And I would avoid words like just thought it, because I get that a lot from salespeople. Or like superficial, like, hope everything's great with you, or, it's just not real. That's not really why you're making the connection. I like to just get right into it. Hi, Joe. Thought I'd reconnect to see if you have any time to meet in October. Things have been going very well. You don't want someone to feel like the only, like, that you're having a really hard time, because when they're getting together for you for the first time, again, gosh, the things all of us are going through right now. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I'm going to add another difficult situation onto this. They'll be a lot more open to speaking with you if you give them an understanding, like, you're okay, and this is a bonus to what everything else you have going on. And I hate to say, you might not feel that way, but it is good to give that, put that kind of forward to get those meetings and have conversations with people. And then things have been going well and would be great to get your perspective. Thanks, Sal, right? So very short, again, and sweet. The other thing I want to note here is, I haven't said dear Joe or dear sir. And sometimes what happens is we come from a place where there's a lot of formality, right? And it's absolutely expected that we will approach our contacts that way where we're from. In North America, I've found anyway, I don't know, I'm sure you have too, Kamara, that it's a much more casual culture when it comes to writing these types of notes.
Yes.
And the minute we say dear sir, we put this huge gap between us and that other person, because that is not a way they're used to being addressed. Right. So saying hi, even though it might feel extremely uncomfortable and informal to you, which I totally get, that is how people communicate, generally speaking, in North America, and it will stand out if we don't. And it's better for us to not necessarily stand out in that way in our first note to somebody.
Absolutely. And to take that one step further, you never know how the person, well, you may know, but you need to be cautious using sir or madam in case you don't know how the person you're addressing identifies.
Correct.
So,
yeah.
And I'm pretty easygoing about this, but I've often been referred to as dear sir.
Oh, wow. Really?
And I list my pronouns on my LinkedIn profile. So dear sir doesn't really align with that. But anyway, so that's some of what I receive. And that's an automatic. I don't acknowledge it, because that also tells me the person didn't bother to look at my profile or get to know who I was.
Yeah.
They were possibly using a templated message blast, which means that I'm not particularly important in the in their job search. And so it's not really worth my time to reach back. And yeah, to your point as well about sounding, trying to mitigate sounding in an urgent kind of situation, or feeling a little down in your job search. We don't want to be a drain.
Right.
in all senses of the word. So when we're networking, we don't want it to be a drain of time. We don't want to drain energy. And we don't want to create extra work for someone. We want to make it very easy for them to give us a hand with what we're asking for.
Yeah, totally.
So, was there another follow-up after this?
There's one more.
Okay, great.
So this is the follow-up after this is imagining they've gotten back to you and said, yeah, sure, I'd be happy to give you 30 minutes or spend 30 minutes or whatever it is. I would always keep it to 30 minutes because first of all, an hour, you'd be surprised how much you can cover in 30 minutes, and then the hour will feel like it drags on.
Totally.
And some people aren't going to be willing to even give you that much time. Sometimes people book these meetings for 20 minutes because they make people feel like, you know, they might have that extra 10 minutes back, or if the conversation's going really well, they can take that 10 minutes. But it's up to you. I personally would stick to 30 and then give them 3 options to meet. And I like to include the 12 to 1 o'clock time slot in there if I can, because you don't want to seem too available, right? Because you don't want to be like, anytime next week, you tell me what works for you. Then it looks like maybe things aren't going that well. Right. So just saying, hi, you know, here are 3. 3 is the magic number. Did you know that, Kamara? Research shows that 3 is the magic number. Offer 3 time slots. And someone might not be able to fill any of those, but they'll come back and say, you're most likely to get a response with that. Now, I know, Kamara, you and I both use Calendly. I don't know if you've changed to another system yet, but you are the person that introduced me to it, and I love it. Oh, yeah. Really? So thank you for that. Yes. You're welcome. The first meeting I ever booked with you was on Calendly, and I still remember. Yeah. So what I don't like when someone needs my help and they just say, book time here. Because what it feels like is they don't value my time. They want me to be the administrator. Right. But actually, people like Kamara and I who use Calendly all the time are pretty happy to book on other people's Calendly because we know it takes away that back and forth. Actually, are you free? So what I like to say, and it's worked really well, if it's easier, sometimes I say, if it's easier for you, you're welcome to have a look at my Calendly. The link is below. Choose a time that's convenient. It will do all the work for us of setting up a meeting and Zoom link for us. Thanks, Amy. Now, you might not have a Zoom account, and that's okay. I don't know. Do you know, Kamara, can you use Google Meets on it?
Not that, I mean, you can, but I believe you need to manually set it up. Okay. Zoom has an integration though. Yeah, Zoom has an integration. Don't worry if you don't have a Zoom. Yeah. What you can do instead is you can just let Calendly do the work of setting up the time. Right. And then you add your meet link to that. Right. You probably don't want to ask them to do it. I know Zoom has free accounts. I think the meetings are 45 minutes for one person. So you could set up a free Zoom account. It probably won't integrate with Calendly, but then you can just add the Zoom link to the invite once it comes through. So you're giving them a lot of options and you show them that you value their time. The other recommendation I would make is, I know you're probably really busy, but try as much as possible to get back to them within 24 hours. Or 12 hours. I try to get back to people as like ASAP, as they say. I hate that expression, but I do try to get back to people very quickly because it shows that I respect their time and that I'm willing to do the work to get the opportunity to speak with them. For sure. Yeah. For sure. Yeah, just about Calendly and its integrations. If you're in an area where Zoom might not be enabled, or might be prohibited by the government or the powers that be, it might be a good idea to see how you can pay to call the person who you're trying to network with via a paid service. So so you're actually calling their phone. I think you can use WhatsApp and there's video options. The other thing, you could use WhatsApp. Yeah. There's just some areas where a lot of the voice over IP stuff is just like,
no, it's not allowed. Okay.
Yeah. So I've had to use, for certain areas, as an example, I've had to download an app called Bodum,
Okay.
and talk to clients that way.
Oh, interesting.
But
Okay.
it just really depends on your area. But basically, what I'm getting at is, if you're asking someone for a networking meeting, you pay the bill.
Yeah, I know that is hard, but yes, you do. The other thing I
Yeah,
was going to say is if you are using your phone and you're not using a laptop, try to find a steady place to put your phone. And I like when people put it this way instead of this way
yep,
because it's a better frame and it
great
actually
point.
will look like you're on a computer. And then the other thing you can do is get, oh, I'm going to forget what it's called, but like a stand for it.
Like a
For
tripod.
tripod, thank you. A
Okay.
tripod for your phone, and then you can just have it and maybe put it on a table or something, and that way it's not like, you're shaking around.
Right.
And make sure you
Right.
have a good angle.
Right. Right.
Kamara and I spoke a few weeks ago, and I told her I have to use my phone and it's going to be a very bad angle.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we know each other, right? This is your
For
very
sure.
first impression.
For
And there's
sure.
something going on. It's called imprinting. We're very cognitively receptive when we're meeting someone for the very first time. And we kind of make a judgment on them based on that very first interaction. We don't even mean to jump to judgment. It's just our brain does all that bad stuff for us without us even trying. And we're kind of they're going to build a blueprint of us on their brain. So we want that blueprint to really be great and then they'll build a belief system about us from there. And that belief system is going to determine whether they recommend us or not for a job going forward. So, and then think about, once this meeting is booked, now you want to start thinking about, how am I going to run this meeting when I get on the call?
That's a great point. And I have a few thoughts about that,
Yeah.
but what are your thoughts about in terms of running the meeting?
Well, I think first of all, be prepared. So even before
Mm,
you have the meeting, do your research on them, know where they work, how long they've been there, a little bit more about them. And then you want to really think about, what do you need to know from this meeting? Like, have objectives for this meeting. One of your objectives might be to be able to have a follow-up to send them your resume, right? But
mhm.
you want to know what you're going to say to them. If they're in marketing, and I keep bringing up marketing, but if they're in marketing and you're in marketing, make sure you let them know what kind of marketing position you're looking for and be as specific
Mhm.
as possible. Maybe you're a social media manager. Maybe you're a content person who creates, brochures or whatever it is. Do we use brochures anymore?
I
If
don't
they're not
know.
online, I don't know. But think about what it is in the marketing field. Like, maybe you have packaged goods experience, and that's what you want to continue doing. That's your wheelhouse, and that's what you're comfortable in, and that's what they do. But target that conversation. So if you also do social media, and next week you're talking to someone who's a social media person, tell them social media. But the other person, make sure you're more targeted in what you're saying to them, because if the conversation goes well, they'll be starting to think about links. But the worst thing you can do is tell them you're open to anything,
Mm.
because then nothing will come to their mind. People are much better when we give them some examples of the types of. So when I sent out that email to everyone I knew to get a job, I was very specific about the 3 types of jobs. I even included potential job titles in there so that they could understand when to think of me for work.
I think that's a great point. And yeah, career clarity, which
Yes.
is something, which is what you're talking about, is super important throughout your job search.
Yeah.
And to your point about, like, don't say you're open to everything. That's because you're going to also create work for the person.
Yes.
If they have to go out and do any sort of your job as part of your job search, you're going to lose them. Like, it's going to be an ineffective meeting. It's going to be a weak connection,
Mhm.
and it will be forgettable, just, to put it plainly. And so, or it will be memorable in the wrong way.
Yes, that's right. This person will
uh,
do anything. That's,
yeah, yeah.
mhm.
So, knowing how you're qualified, what you're qualified to do, and what you want to do as well, and what you want to target is going to be essential at every stage in your job search. So don't underestimate the career clarity. It needs to happen before anything else happens. It's the most
And then
important
the
one.
humility, right? Because,
Right.
like, listen, I picked up dog poop for the first year I got back from England, right?
Right.
That's like, and I was totally fine to do that because I knew it was a stepping stone to get, and it might sound silly, but I knew I had to do that, right? And
Yeah.
I did it and I did it and kept a smile on my face the whole time I was doing it, even though it wasn't amazing every day. But here's the thing, if we go into this, we've come from another place, we're moving to a new place. It's hard to start at the same spot that you finished at in the country you came from. So having that humility and demonstrating that you understand you are, again, I'm using it, but marketing director, where you came from, you might be a marketing manager or a specialist here to start, because there's nothing worse than getting into a job and underachieving. The best thing is if you get a job that's you kind of know what to do, you're going to look like a rock star in your organization because you're like impressing everybody with how good you are at your job. So that's a great place to start, and you'll end up rising quickly if you're very careful about how you go about doing that, rather than trying to start and get something that might be unattainable right now. Nobody likes to hear that, and I certainly didn't want to hear it, but you can bet once I got back to the corporate world, Kamara, I did not have an equal position to what I was doing in England. And I just worked and worked and worked and like did that pick and shovel work to get me to the next phase and the next phase. But if you tell someone you're expecting to be marketing director because you are a marketing director back home, they're going to immediately worry that you're going to have your expectations are too high. And and again, I know I didn't want to hear that when I got here, and I did learn the hard way.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That is unfortunately the reality. And it can be a tough pill to swallow. On the same on the same hand, or on the other hand, career paths are not linear, right? So even if you have to take a couple steps back, in a sense, you never know what path that will take you on as you grow and develop your career in the new marketplace. So,
and guess what? You're going to be networking all the time now.
you're gonna. That's so right.
I always say, and this is something I've said in the book: always be reorg ready, and that means always be ready to lose your job and have to find a new one. 100%. And what that also means is do not stop networking because you get a good job. Right. You never know it. And I've told this to millions of, no, not millions. Okay. I don't want to, I'm inflating the numbers there. Okay. A few, maybe 1,000 people I've told this to. Okay. And I'd say most of them don't listen to me. And then I hear from them later and was like, I should have listened to you. Right. Because now I'm not working and I stopped networking and I have to start from scratch again, right?
Yes, you do. Yeah, never stop.
Stop networking.
Just never stop networking. Yeah. And absolutely, like it's just, it should be part of your professional development, basically ongoing, is to be networking actively, and just always building relationships. And you don't have to you don't have to look super far to network effectively. So we've talked a lot about networking digitally. So we've talked a bit about networking locally. So hiking groups in Toronto, in your case, and then for me, buy nothing groups.
Yeah, that's the craziest one. Yeah,
I know. And my dodgeball team. And you can really network in your own backyard. Tap your alumni groups, so you have an instant thing to relate on. Alumni groups, previous employers, newcomer groups. There's a lot of newcomer networking groups as well in various cities, so check those out too. There's volunteering. If you are volunteering, there's a whole network built into whatever organization you're volunteering with. You're all, even by default, just by building relationships, you're networking.
Yeah.
So just keep at it.
That's why I always tell people, like, if you're getting together with your family and friends, always be prompt. And one of the reasons I say that is because your family and friends might be your link to getting a job.
That's
And if you're
true.
always late and unreliable with them, they're going to wonder, and they might just not mention job opportunities to you. And that's because, not because they don't love you and don't want to help you. As soon as they make that recommendation, they're attaching their brand to yours,
Yeah,
whether
they're
they're your
vouching for you.
family member or not. And if you don't show up on time or you are unprepared, because that's been there, even though we might have a different professional self than personal self, that is just how we're starting to be known by them. And so they're not going to be as likely to put our name forward when, even
It's
if there's
true.
opportunity.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
So let's talk a bit more about who we can network with outside of the people that are a close connection with us. Let's talk a bit about like recruiters and hiring managers. So do you have any thoughts on that before I take a comment that someone input here?
Well, one thing I would just say that it's like, I'm glad you brought it up because it's a really good idea to start networking with recruiters as part of your process. Mm-hmm.
Great. Yeah. I mean, it's an expectation that recruiters are going to receive unsolicited messages from potential job seekers. And, that helps them in their process as well, if they're especially looking to fill a particular role. One comment up here that came up here is most job postings do not give you any info on who the hiring manager is. That is true. But you can do some investigative work on our favorite tool, LinkedIn. So, so I have a video on my YouTube channel, which I'll point to nearing the end of this, which we will be nearing soon because we should probably get into questions because we're almost at the top of the hour. But in any case, so I walk you through how to find recruiters on LinkedIn, and the same process can be used for finding potentially the hiring manager. So this is going to be a best efforts guesstimation, but even if you get the hiring manager wrong, it's okay to network with the person. And then you go back to the templates that we were looking at earlier, Amy's templates. And instead of mentioning that you're in a certain field, you could also add in there, I admired the work that you've been doing for such and such company. I would, if you could spare a few moments, I'd love to get your advice on how someone could have a successful career path at whatever company, whatever profession. But you don't always have to nail it. Like you don't always have to get the hiring manager 100% right all the time. You can still add that networking meeting, that informational interview with someone who might be the wrong person.
Yeah. And then they might put you on to the right person.
Exactly. And and to that point, you can always put at the end of a message to, say, a recruiter, if I should be reaching out to someone else on your team, please feel free to pass my message along. And that gives them an out for not being able to respond or something like that. So
two really quick things. One, if you haven't checked out Kamara's YouTube channel, do it. I love it. I'm not even looking for a job, and I go to it just for like great content, a lot of fun, really well done, and that it's so memorable. So that's number one. I knew I was going to forget number two if I talked about number one. Oh, yes, this is it. Don't ask someone if you're just meeting them for the first time or reaching out, don't ask them for a job.
Right.
Because, and this is why, if you say, I'm wondering if you're hiring, they're going to say no, and that's going to be the end of the conversation. Yep. You're not going to get that meeting. Just say, I love for your advice. Places. And then if there's jobs in their organization, they like you, then they'll, that will be different. But if you ask, because people have done that to me, are you hiring? We're not, sorry. And that's it. That ends the discussion.
Yep. Totally. Just the door is closed at that point. And it's like, oh, well, you can't exactly backtrack that. Oh, well, I'd still like to get to know you. It
Yeah,
builds a
exactly.
relationship.
Please. Yeah, let's get together though. So do you want to take a few questions? I
Yeah.
see you answered, I think you answered the one about writing to a recruiter.
So yeah, I might not have mentioned this, but so I have two videos that go hand in hand in terms of networking with recruiters. One, the process in finding the recruiter on LinkedIn, and two, the I give an approach for how you would message a recruiter, and I believe I have some scripts in there
Oh, that's
in that
great.
video.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'll point to the titles of those videos at the end of this, because for some reason when I put links into YouTube Live, YouTube doesn't really like it. So
Oh.
it's marked as spam or something.
Well, I think
Um,
everyone here is on your mailing list too, right? Hopefully they are, so they can
yes.
get all of the content.
Yes, I could follow up with those. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, if you have some other questions, please feel free to enter them in the chat. We have a few minutes left, and we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have about networking. It's a big topic.
It is a big topic, and
Yeah.
it's an overwhelming topic. It's something that's really hard to do, but the more you do it, the better you get at it. That's what I always suggest to people. When you start networking, do it with people that you know a little bit, right? Like, or
Yeah.
even network with family and friends, which sounds ridiculous, because then you can make all your mistakes with them. We have a question.
That's right.
What do you think about the idea of connecting with a recruiter after applying for a position?
Well, Kate, I'm very glad that you asked this question because this is a fundamental step actually in my suggested approach in my video. So I'm really glad you asked that. You know what? I'm going to go to that slide just to show the title. So the titles of the videos that I'm speaking to are how to find recruiters on LinkedIn, and then how to message recruiters on LinkedIn after applying for a job. So
perfect.
Your intuition is so spot on here, because it's great. In fact, it's the ideal situation to message a recruiter after you've done the applying, because they need you to apply for them to do anything for you. So they need you basically in their system in order to action your application. So otherwise, when you send a message before you've applied, then their response to you is go apply for it, and then we'll talk. So you're adding an added layer of kind of really non-impactful correspondence. But if you can preemptively apply, do it, then reach out, tell them why you're a great fit, and ask for an interview or a call.
Yeah, that's really good advice.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I would also we've got a few more sessions coming up.
Yeah.
We have to nail down the date for the next one, and
right.
And I know if you're on Kamara's mailing list, you'll get all of the information about how to register. But be careful who you trust when it comes to getting the information that you need to help you with your job search. There's a lot of great people out there who are going to give you great advice, and then there's some that you may question for whatever reason. So just be cautious that I can be like that too. Like, you're as good as your last conversation, but really think through the approaches and if the advice was sound, but also if it speaks to you personally, it's part of who you are. And just really think about it and the implications of taking advice before you take action, because sometimes people don't really understand the situation you're in, right? So they may have all the best intentions. It might actually be great advice just for somebody else, not for you. And it's great that you're coming to these sessions. We're really happy that you showed up, but yeah, keep in mind that you want to be careful how you take the approach with how you find a job and how you network, being sincere to yourself, but also making sure that anyone you're getting advice from really may understand what position you're actually in.
For sure. That's a great point. That's a great point. Last thing I want to mention on this slide is I do have a free resource that is post-interview thank you guide and templates. So when we're saying you never stop networking, This is an example of this. You're networking even after the interview happens. So feel free to grab that if that's of value to you. Anyway, so yeah, so we are going to have our next session in a couple weeks. How to search for jobs in North America. So we'll be talking about the kind of the actual like searching online for jobs, and where to find jobs, how to uncover jobs. And we will be letting you know about that date. In the meantime, to get notified of that date and get the link to the webinar, make sure you do sign up. Most of you are probably signed up already, but if you haven't, make sure to sign up for our webinar series. You sign up once and you'll get all the notifications. Yeah, if there's any final questions, please do let us know. The stream is about 10 seconds delayed, so we'll just need to give it a little bit. But any parting thoughts or words of wisdom, Amy?
Well, like I said, I'll finish where I began. What you're doing is really tough if you're coming to a new country and looking for a job and starting to network. And you're doing a great job. You're here in this session, so it means you're doing a lot of the right things. So keep going, and it will work out. It just may take a little bit of time.
Absolutely. Such great advice. And yeah, networking is the long game. So stay the course. Is going to pay off for you. And invest the time and energy in yourself and keep at it. So that's great. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. And please do sign up if you haven't, and stay tuned to your email for all of the notifications. And I will also be sending the replay of this webinar out tomorrow as well. Okay.
Great.
All the best, everybody.
Thanks so much, guys. See you later.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.